Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, coming at you for more podcasting greatness on multiple platforms, everywhere good podcasts are sold, as well as with video here on YouTube. Hey, everybody, you can see things are a little simpler, a little easier this week in the Shelton studios. Some equipment malfunctions getting sorted out, but we are making this work anyway. And this week, I am welcoming Pat Hendrickson. Pat Hendrickson, yes?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. I always get that little doubt as soon as I say my guest's name. I'm always like, did I get it right? Because I always seem to brutalize it, and I am horrible at that. So, Pat, welcome to the show. First off, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think this will be interesting. Now, you are an educator, and you're an educator about education, and you reached out to me, and we've talked about education, and I thought, oh my God, this is so long overdue on my channel. I can't believe it's been so long that I haven't really talked with a trained professional, somebody who really knows what they're talking about when it comes to how to go about doing education and how should we approach this. And for people who have survived traumatic cult-like experiences, whether growing up in one of these groups or whether having some intense long-term experience with it that somehow cuts across one's education, this happens routinely. This is a normal thing for high control groups to impose themselves and cut across people's ability to educate themselves or get a decent education. This is very, very common. So I don't want to make this, I don't want anybody out there thinking this is some kind of fringe thing, because it's actually not. It's one of the biggest concerns and tragedies of people, especially kids, growing up in high control authoritarian groups, whether religious or not, although it tends to be on the religious side. We see a lot of this. Where education just is second rate or doesn't matter or isn't even attempted. And the very barest of an education is given to some of these children who grew up in groups such as 12 Tribes, the Family, the Church of Scientology, even the Jehovah's Witnesses. You don't necessarily see it with groups like the Mormons. They're a bit more mainstreamed when it comes to this. They actually encourage education and have their own universities. But there are so many of these groups that actively try to stop people from getting educated. So if that's the intro picture here that I'm painting, Pat and I are going to try to talk here and give some advice and some very practical, down-to-earth, real, instruction to people about what do you do? How do you approach this? How do you make up for that deficit of education and start approaching this? I'm doing a master's program, but you're not going to jump straight to that, right? So, there's some intermediary steps. There's some beginning steps. So, again, that's my intro to this. So, Pat, why don't we start with telling everybody your credentials and how you're coming into this and what your interest is with this?
Thank you, Chris. I'm a research fellow with Fielding Graduate University's Institute for Social Innovation, and I'm actually doing some research now. I finished up some of it with our participants on learning and becoming educated about the process of retiring. So I'm all about learning from beginning to, end. I have a doctorate in educational leadership and change, and I have a master's degree in education. I have a second almost completed master's in business administration and a business administration degree. And I earned all of my degrees as a working adult. So adult learners are my passion, and I like to see them empowered. I currently work teaching different adult success, online student success seminars, and I also teach business and organizational learning and change. So I'm all about learning. I've worked in educational institutions for, geez, I guess about 20 years now, or maybe more. And I've come in contact with a lot of individuals who've been at a crossroads in their education. And to me, everybody learns, and learning and education are a little bit different, but everybody learns. Everybody has transferable skills. So, no matter what point of your career you're in, or whatever point of life you're in, you got there by learning a few things. And those things that you've learned transfer to other areas, whether they're a formal education program or an informal one. So a lot of people may think, oh, I don't have a degree, or I don't have my high school education. That doesn't mean that you're not smart or that you don't know things. It just means you really don't have that piece of paper that says you do. So, with that, Chris, I'm going to kind of let you lead me in this conversation.
Of course. Well, let's let's go ahead and do that then. Because this is a very, very broad topic. Learning and education are huge fields. People spend lifetimes studying this, as you have, and really looking, trying to figure out, how do people learn, why, what motivates them to, what are the best methods to do it, what's the best sequence to do it, what's the use of having it in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. So I think maybe where I'd like to start with this, in terms of cult survivors, or even human trafficking, domestic abuse survivors. I mean, again, we're talking about people coming out of what we might call oppressive or oppressed situations, right? Where their abilities, their mental ability, their cognitive ability has been suppressed. It's actually been sat on and held down. This is often because whether you're dealing with a narcissistic partner in a domestic situation, or whether you're dealing with a cult situation, it seems characteristic of such people who do that kind of thing to other people, that they very much take advantage of and try to keep people ignorant. They take advantage of ignorance. They don't want you knowing what they're up to. They don't want you knowing what they're doing to you. And they certainly don't want you empowered to escape from their clutches. These are predators. These are human predators. They really do exist. And so education is a ticket, or a way to see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how to undo, or get away from, or out from underneath, and then undo what they did.
Well,
that's basically,
I think it's good for people to sit with themselves for a minute and think about where they are, and what they know, and where they want to go. I do know from some of my students who have been involved in cults and oppressive relationships, that they kind of need to get that whole, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, or if your audience is familiar with it, but Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. And so getting the basic needs met of, food and air and clothing, and those things are essential. But then to really get to where you want to be with your education, or where you want to go, you kind of need to have almost a replacement in some ways of that social group that you left. You have to create new social relationships, I think. I mean, Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong.
No. Absolutely. And the way we have phrased that, or the way I have phrased that and talked about that most explicitly, is you need a support system.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Very, very, very few people successfully have the force of will to leave a high control situation or destructive relationship, and then manage to navigate life and their recovery on their own. It is a very, very rare person who's able to do that. And it's not, and really, it's not even the preferred way to do it, because you really want that acculturation and association and relationship repair by, engaging in healthy relationships after having
Right.
such unhealthy ones.
Dr. Ruby Payne, who does a lot of work in poverty, and a lot of my students who've come from different situations, when they escape or leave that relationship, they're almost immediately put into a poverty situation. They need a place to stay, they need resources and all. So their relationships with whomever they're with at the time are really very, critical, and forming new relationships is very important. And so my point about bringing up relationships is to kind of encourage people to cultivate a new type of relationship with maybe somebody like a librarian, or somebody at the local school district, someone who's a credible person. I mean, it's fine to know different people, but you probably want to get aligned with someone who is a professional in some way that can guide you to where you need to go. So if you need literacy, if you want to learn how to read, go to the library and ask the librarian about the literary council, or just say, I want to learn how to read. And they'll direct you to resources in your area. I mean, there's a lot of information online, but someone who is in a situation where maybe they only have their phone, their track phone, or they get a different phone every week, or they're borrowing someone's phone, they probably need to find a way to get to a library if they're not too far out in a rural community, and connect with a librarian, because a librarian can hook them up with the local literacy council. And that the literacy council, I was a Lawbach literacy tutor for a while, and they'll help you learn how to read. And
Wow.
it's kind of interesting because and I don't know if you've found this, Chris, but I would offer one maybe word of caution for people. As you become more educated, or you learn more and become empowered, your relationships may change. I find that with a lot of my students. They may not have the same friends they had before. They may even have some family members that are not on board with where they're going with their learning or their education. One lady that I worked with as a Lawbach tutor, she just had a very limited grade school education. Just came to grade school periodically, did not really attend high school, and we got to a point in our literacy training where her boyfriend gave her a card, and it was supposed to be a Valentine's Day card. And the card read, "To my daughter," and he told her it read, "To my darling." But she knew enough that it didn't mean what he thought it said. So she advanced beyond his skills, and they sort of had a relationship where he was helping her along, and now she was exceeding the skills that he had in that area. So that is one, word of caution. You'll change, and it may change your relationship.
It's a good point. Actually, I'll take that one further, because if there is one thing I can speak to with a lot of vigor and is the changes, the unpredicted changes that happen to you when you start learning stuff. It's unpredictable almost by its very nature, because learning is about connecting ideas together and their relationships with one another is a really important part of learning. And it's hard to take something so broad and summate it to a simple statement, but certainly the relationship of ideas, the relationship of feelings, of attitudes, of emotions, of history, and of memes, and everything around you. I mean, everything is changed when you become more aware of how certain things work. Anything. I mean, it doesn't even really matter what it is. You can learn how a car works, and suddenly your relationships are different. I mean, it's just really weird how it happens, right?
Right.
You're like, oh, that's what my dad was always going on about when I was a teenager. I didn't realize he actually was making some good points. Wow, I was really giving him a hard time, and I really shouldn't have if I had only known. Right? I mean, it comes out of left field. It really does. You'll never be able to predict how learning things is going to change you. All you really should know is that it's going to.
Right.
I would say, I would add to that while, and this is just a general statement, I'm talking about anything from an 8th grade level thing to, full-on doctorate, anywhere in between. Any kind of learning is going to do this to you. So I'm speaking about all of it here, I think. And it can be a little scary. It can be intimidating.
Sure.
It can be challenging because people are afraid of change. What does that mean? It's going to change me. What do you mean? Well, I do mean for the better. Okay. So I consistently,
that's true.
Right? Consistently across the boards, learning is making yourself better on almost any metric you want to use, any value set you want to use. You're a better person for knowing more things and being able to relate things together better. But it can be emotionally challenging because you will find in learning things that it challenges some of the preconceived ideas you've had, or these ideas you've been carrying around with you for a while. And you're going to have to kind of look at some of that, and it might be a little uncomfortable at times, right? But it's always in the direction of getting to a better place. And I would certainly, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a very, very key brick in the foundation of this whole thing, is to accept that change is inevitable. It is a good thing when it comes to education. And it's actually, pretty much the main reason why most of us reach for it in the first place, is because we look around and go, well, I don't know, everything around me, I'm not really happy with how all this is working. Maybe I could do something to make it better. Maybe I should learn some things, right? And so if you're coming at it, I think, from that point of view, or that intention, then I think that's a good place to be. I think that's a good place for your head to be. If it's terrifying and intimidating and overwhelming, okay, back it up, because you're probably taking on a little too much too fast. You can always walk it back and make it not so intimidating and scary and all of that. So that might be a pretty good ground rule for this whole thing.
I think I think it's a really good idea to just kind of dip your toe into the water.
Yeah.
There are some great free things available, and I really encourage people to, it's a scary word, assessment, but to take assessments.
You mean a test? You want
not
me to
really
take a
test? We don't like to use that word about an assessment.
Well, actually, what is an assessment then, if it's not a test?
Okay, it's really a measure of where you are currently. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it,
So the idea isn't to make you feel stupid?
No, it's not. It
Are you
shouldn't
sure?
be. Actually, I've had some instructors at times that made me feel pretty stupid, but no, an assessment is really to give you a baseline of data or information so that you can progress to the next level of proficiency.
Right.
And when I have students take an assessment, they really are so, despite whatever I tell them, they're really concerned about it. And if they then stick with it long enough, they have the opportunity to see, oh, yes, I see where I've been and where I am, 8 weeks later.
Yeah.
So the purpose of an assessment really is usually to get some baseline data. If you're
Okay.
if you may get an assessment at the end of a course, they may just call it your assessment, and then that would be to assess what you did learn during that formal coursework, and then you're assessed on very specific standards or competencies. And so then maybe it's a pass fail or an AB or
Right.
C.
Right.
So, that would be an assessment in coursework. But the assessments that I'm talking about are generally free, and they're available to all of us through our tax dollars.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to just make sure I get it right here. Boy, the Department of Labor and the Department of Education have a lot of different sites that you can use, but primarily it's called Career One Stop. And it's
Career One Stop. Okay.
Right. And that site allows you to explore different careers, and you can compare different salaries and what the benefits may be for those different careers. There's also something at that, may not be at Career One Stop. And I can give you a list of these links, Chris, so that you can put them in the program or on your website.
Yep.
My Skills, My Future. And that helps you find careers based on what you currently have done or past jobs. I know that, we've discussed when you were in Scientology, some of the different jobs that you held there and the different skills that you had. So this type of a website would help you learn or assess what your current skills are, and maybe sort of gear you towards something that you would be inclined to be good at, or that you already know, or something that perhaps you like. There's another one called the ONET. And the ONET, it used to be a big, thick book like the New York telephone book. It's really big like that. And it's a compendium or a book of all of the different occupations in the United States. Yes, we've gone away from that book, and now it's a website.
Okay.
And
see, these are fascinating resources. I never heard of any of this stuff. I've been asked countless times over the years, where do I start? What do I do? None of the stuff I learned in the cult is helping me, or is that all transferable? I kind of push back a little bit on that, because I think we do learn transferable skills in these groups.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's manual labor, I still think there are transferable skills, but it can be really hard sometimes to figure out how they transfer, because, for example, my management experience is useless in the real world, but as a scientist,
not necessarily.
I'll finish the thought so you know what I mean by that. Is that sitting in a basement, sending telexes to people, ordering them around all day is not a job I'm going to necessarily find. Using L. Ron Hubbard's guide to managing organizations, right? That's what I mean by that. But
right.
I have typing, I have statistical analysis, I have reading, I have reading comprehension, I have writing skills there, I have some degree of analysis skills there, some communication skills. If you're going to get somebody to do something, you have to communicate effectively to them what you want, right? So there are actually a whole cater of baseline useful skills there.
There
But I
are.
might think coming out of that situation, as many, many people have, oh, well, that's hyper specialized Scientology management. That doesn't transfer at all. But no, it very much does if you break it down into its, kind of its parts.
It
And,
does.
yeah.
And that ONET online, that has data. It's a huge database, and it comes in from the Bureau of Labor Statistics
Mm.
and I think the Department of Labor, and there are probably about 200 different professional organizations that contribute information and skills, the skills that are needed in their particular industry. So you can, go to that website. It's www.one, or it's ONET, I guess I should say,
Hmm.
ONET online.org. And you can go there and you can just pop in, let's say, for example, the career psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
You pop that in and it'll tell you what the different tasks are associated with that, what the education is, what the soft skills are, what the educational needs, what the educational levels are, and then what the typical tasks are that you conduct in that. And there are a variety of different crosswalks, and it's really a great website. And
That's
it's
awesome.
got everything from animal trainer to housekeeper, lineman, engineer, everything is in there. If you've paid taxes on it, it's in there. If someone is registered with a business and they have, they're all classified. They have these big numbers and they're all classified. So into different categories. So I really
Mm.
encourage folks to take a look there, because they can look at the particular industry they're interested in, or a field of work, science, and anything. And that will give them an understanding of what skills are needed and what education is needed for that.
That's
It,
awesome, and another really nice reason for that resource also is that it might help separate the fantasy from the reality of those jobs, because we see on TV or we see in movies sometimes a representation of what we think people do in some of these jobs. And then you go online and you do some actual research and you see, oh, yeah, no, it's actually about a lot more things than what you might see represented. So it's really,
right.
it is a good idea to do a little bit of diving in on this stuff and really sussing out how it really works, because you might be surprised at what you learn.
And these resources that I just mentioned, the ONET and Career One Stop, those are credible resources. They're not just, some company that's there going to try to get your money. It's free to you. You've already paid into it with tax dollars. So, make good use of it. You don't have to pay to use it. So it's,
Brilliant.
I mean, you can just spend hours looking in there.
Brilliant. That's awesome. I'd like to talk a little bit more also about free resources through, you mentioned going to the library, which is just perfect, because your libraries are really still your sort of castles of knowledge in this world. And I grew up in a library practically. I love libraries. So I can't push going to them enough. And unfortunately, I think there's fewer of them now than there were when I was growing up, but hopefully I'm wrong about that. But anyway, great resources. Are there, you mentioned I want to learn how to read, or something even as basic as that. What kind of, I mean, is that real? Like, can you really go to these places and say, what kind of programs are there? Are there programs for people to learn math or basics of other fields as well?
There are a lot of ways to do that. It just depends if you're interested in learning, or if
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in an education, and an education would be, where you exit with something, some sort of a certificate. And I would really encourage people to, if they're interested in getting an education, to go to their local school district or community college. And in every state, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there are resources there. Community colleges also have little mini courses in continuing education where you can just participate. You pay a small fee. Some of them are as little as 12 to $20 to just kind of dabble in an area that you're interested in. And it doesn't matter if you pass or fail it. It
Nice.
just gives you some additional experience. Now, if you go into an academic program, that's another story. But there are some great resources. The Khan Academy. Are
Oh
you
well,
familiar with
yes,
that?
I was gonna ask you about online resources next, and that's the top of the list. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not
And
sure.
that's KHAN, by the way,
That's
Academy.
right.
Khan Academy, as in
That's
Wrath of
right.
Khan, not Khan Academy, as in you're getting conned.
No, exactly. And what's good about that is, you can progress at your own pace, and
Mhm.
nobody needs to know what level you're at. I've used it when I was taking grad calculus and needed to brush up on that. I thought I was going to fail, so I went to the Khan Academy,
Yep.
and I could.
Yep.
The good thing about those is they're videos that you can play over and over again. So if you don't get it the first time, maybe like me, you'll get it on the fifth time.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, me too. Because
yeah,
I took advantage of Khan Academy specifically. Also, there's another one. There's a number of these. There's Crash
yes,
Course, Khan Academy. I think I think Bill Gates invested in that one. I think there's a couple others, and these are just educational channels where they're just
right,
throwing all kinds of educational content from very, very simple to very, very advanced. We tend to talk about the advanced stuff on those channels, but there's really, really, really simple stuff there too. And it literally walks you through video by video, step by step, even little tests, even little assessments along the way
right.
to show you what these skills consist of and how to utilize them. And it goes from math to science to reading to all kinds of stuff. It's incredible.
And it's a really good way to see if you're ready to take the next step and
Yeah.
move to, perhaps high school equivalency. If you don't already have high school equivalency, this would be a good way to kind of test the water to see, well, what do I need to learn to get there? And not to freak yourself out. But just take some very basic things. You can start at fourth grade and see if you know fourth grade math, and then kind of work your way up. And I think most of us have some gap in our education. I know I am terrible with the multiplication tables simply because my third grade teacher was out for most of the year and we had a series of substitutes. So we always started with a different times table. And at that time, they
Right.
were teaching penmanship too. So I learned the Palmer method and three other methods. And as a result, I have terrible handwriting. But but I think that there are a lot of ways that you can find out if you're, interested in moving to that next level. And to partially answer that question you asked about where do you go for the math and all that, um, each state each state is a little bit different as to who the keeper of the information is for that high school equivalency, and not everybody uses the GED, which is general equivalency diploma, or sometimes it's referred to as general equivalency development. They use a couple of other ones. They use some states have their own. They only use one. There are three different ones that they use. The let's see, what is it called? The high set. And that's just a high school equivalency test. And then there's another one that's called TASC, TASC, and that's the test assessing secondary completion. So you would want to, if you're interested in attaining your high school equivalency, you would probably want to go to your local community college. You could ask the librarian, or you could go to the school district, and they would, refer you. Usually you can do that with just, a simple phone call. Something I would tell people is about using the libraries is that if you are interested in taking a course, a lot of people will tell you, oh, you can, get it on your phone. You can do the whole course on your phone. I found that to be very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because there really aren't very good writing programs for the phone. It's very hard to see.
Yep.
It's hard to spell and grammar check your work, and a lot of things won't necessarily play or work on the phone. But the libraries usually have a few computers that are up to speed with all of the hardware and software you need. And if you're just getting back on your feet from whatever your situation is, you may not have the ability to buy a new computer. And frequently I'll have students that start a program and they're all excited and they've borrowed their mother's computer, or, a laptop that was sitting in somebody's attic for 2 years, and then it blows up in the third week. So, libraries have a lot of equipment, and again, your tax dollars go into that equipment. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, great point there. I agree. I could not highlight the use of and effectiveness of libraries enough. As resource stations and as places of learning, places you can go to do that as an adult. And I think we need to maybe mention here, just to kind of put it out there again, that it's intimidating, it's scary. It can be even like, you can even become frozen with fear. You can become so anxious about trying to learn something or trying to take this on. So I really want to stress, in approaching this subject at whatever level you're at, take it really, really, really focus yourself on just one step at a time to start with, because you can easily overwhelm yourself with this stuff. It can be quite imposing or intimidating, and it shouldn't be. The thing about this is it's actually not. It just looks that way. So so I really want to keep putting that out there, that you can do this, and that people who are reaching to get better, learn more things, learn more about the world, you absolutely got it. It's the resources are there for you. Just take it one step at a time.
And people want to help you too.
Yeah, like what people? Where do we find these people?
So these people that want to help are, we have, each state has their version of what we call an Employment Security Commission, or I know in North Carolina, they have North Carolina Works, and it's a place like a job placement center that you can go to. It's kind of like a career center. And I will say, you typically don't have to pay. These are resources that are available to us. So you want to look at, your state Employment Security Commission, or I don't know if they're all commissions, but, just look for whatever that state employment entity is. And they usually have local outlets. I mean, if you've ever gotten an unemployment check, that's where they have resources, or those folks can refer you to resources. And don't be afraid to use those resources. They've got a lot of great programs. There are so many different programs that you can take advantage of. You just have to kind of network a little bit, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that that's something that even now I'm intimidated at times to ask for help with something.
Yeah.
I think, oh, well, I should be able to do this. But, it's not always so. Maybe you don't have the information. Don't be afraid to, ask for it, because the worst thing somebody can say is, I can't help you. I don't know, or you have to go to this place. So, I agree with you, Chris. I think it can be very scary and intimidating, but, this is everybody's individual journey. And you want to make this the best that you possibly can for yourself and the people, around you that you love and that love you. So, don't hold yourself back, because you've been holding yourself back for a long time, or you've been held back, and now's the time to fly. I mean, just little by little, empower yourself. Take small steps. Maybe it's, today I'm going to look up that information on the ONET.
Right. Exactly. One step at a time, and just don't let yourself get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from all my personal experience with this, because it took me a long time to get around to facing and dealing with and looking at my lack of education, even though an incredibly well-read person. I've read thousands of books in my life. I know all kinds of facts and factoids and trivia, and I'm really good at Trivial Pursuit. But when it came to, staying out of Scientology, all that didn't really help me very much, right? And so then I finally get out of that, and it's like, oh my God, the world is quite a bit different than I thought it would be or is, and you got to adjust to that. So I was shocked. I guess where I'm going with that is I was shocked. I was blown away, and to this day I still am, at how much help there is out there.
Yeah.
At how many people there are in so many positions, whether it's their job or not, but especially the people whose job it is, to help you, and they want to. Like, not everybody has a job because they hate it, because they're just trying to make money. I mean, there are people out there who really love what they do, and they really want to help you.
Right.
That it makes their day to help you. Don't be afraid to ask.
Well, that's why I reached out to you, Chris, because I have been a listener of your podcast for quite some time now. And, I kept always thinking, oh, it'd be nice, if Chris would, go back and get his degree. I have these little conversations with myself about other people.
Yeah.
And the day that I heard that you were going back to get your degree, I was just so thrilled for you. And, I just wanted to let you know, hey, I'm here. I support what you're doing. It's great. You can do this. And, there are a lot of people out here that are willing to help other people, because, many of us have been there before. It took me 3 times to earn my degree.
Yeah, there you go.
It took me 3 times. I didn't know I had a learning disability. I didn't know I had a learning disability.
Wow.
And then, I have
what? Tell me what happened.
Well, I mean,
if you want, I mean, obviously
no,
I'm
it's
crying
fine.
a little bit.
I've always had a learning disability, but I didn't know it. I was working in education, and I was working with the director of, I think they called it special education at that time. Now they call it something else. But we were working on a grant together for autistic students. And somebody was vacuuming outside, and I simply couldn't finish my sentences, and I really couldn't think, and I had to ask the person to stop vacuuming. And after a little bit of a conversation, this expert said to me, oh yeah, you have this. You have central auditory processing disorder. Like,
really?
I do? And I said, well, can I get my doctorate paid for because of this, or can I get assistance? And she said, no, you've already managed to, self accommodate. But my entire life, I would get lost after hearing a series of three things. I would jumble up it's kind of like a disconnect with what's going into your ears and your brain.
Yeah.
So I thought I had a bad sense of direction, but really I just can't follow directions. If somebody were to say to me, go a mile, turn right at the light, then you make your next left, I'm already lost.
Interesting. Well, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And the reason why is because I would like to, because of the audience that I am anticipating is watching this, or certainly actually hoping is watching this. There's a lot of insulting, putting down, invalidating. I mean, we can use big words, but it's really just, this oppression thing in these groups or in these relationships. Yeah. There's a lot of very personal, cutting remarks made there, and a lot of effort to try to make people feel stupid.
Right.
To the point that they start believing it, right? That sure. It can become traumatizing, and it can really become a thing that they think they're stupid. And I only bring this up right now because it becomes such a barrier to learning new things when you feel with surety, with certainty that you're an idiot. Right? That you're incapable of learning, you're incapable of growth, you're just naturally an idiot, right? Because you've been told this so many times in so many different ways. Sometimes very openly, sometimes very overtly, right? Other times it's very passive aggressive, but it still is creating that same mindset in a person. And I want to get across, I mean, I'd actually, here's my question to you is, as an educator, right? How many people are there out there that you've run into or read or done studies on or read studies on who actually are just such idiots that they just can't learn?
It would be a very, I can't think of any that I've read.
I really
can't. I really can't.
Right.
I can't at all. I do remember, being with a group of, and these women were not idiots by any means, but they didn't have a lot of formal education. And I was working with a federal committee at the time it's no longer in existence, but it combined that Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, Education. I think it was the military too, but there were like 5 different Department of Defense. That's what it was. So it was the National Occupational Information Coordinating Council. That's a lot. Yeah. So that was a federal committee, and there was, remember Welfare to Work? I don't know if you remember that. There was a big program, and we had a curriculum that we were kind of test driving. And I was out in the community with a bunch of women who were interested in, getting back to work from this initiative. I think it was during the Clinton administration. So we were talking one day, and I talked about how my husband had been out of work, and, he went, and we didn't have any money coming in. And, I picked up little tiny jobs, and he did too. And those ladies said to me, well, Pat, if you knew us, we could have told you where to go for all the resources you needed. I mean, they said we could get you food, housing, transportation. So, while those people did not have a formal education, they certainly knew resources and had networks and knew how to access things that I needed. And I wished I knew them then.
Right. Just knowing they exist now is the first important step.
Yeah.
Because once you know, most of this stuff is just a Google search away.
It is. It really is. I mean, and I would say being very cautious about where you Google and what you Google. Make sure that it is, a government or a true education resource, because there's always somebody out there that's interested in making a buck on your hard-earned money, or your naivete. So you've really got to be kind of careful about where you're going. And that's why I say you want to go to some professionals. If you think you're going to invest time and money in something, make sure you kind of do your due diligence before you expend any money, or commit or sign on to anything. But
Right.
there are resources in our communities. There are a lot of businesses that invest in the communities with literacy programs. um,
Right.
so different places that people shop. I know that Dollar General, I don't know if you're familiar with Dollar General. We have a lot of them in the South.
Mm.
They have a literacy program. And,
Wow.
a lot of foundations. Lumina Foundation has courses online. Trying to think of some of the others, but there's a lot of stuff, like you said, at your fingertips. And most of them, if they're a foundation, they have good intentions typically.
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's actually a really good point. They're not necessarily perfect. You
right,
might have mistakes happen. Be patient.
right. That's right.
Persist. Persist. Just because somebody screws up doesn't mean they had it in for you.
Oh
It
yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't even necessarily mean that they even that you should take it personally at all.
No.
This has been a problem for me for a long time, and so I put it out there for others too. Um, you feeling, it can feel very vulnerable to reach for help. It can feel very like, dangerous to yourself to reach and be afraid of getting your hand slapped,
Right.
or getting, sucker punched or something. It happens. It sucks when it does. No one can promise you that it won't happen to you again. But what I can promise you is that if you persist,
Yeah.
and if you don't take it all so personally, because so much of what you're going to run into is not about you. It's just about the process or bureaucracy or problems, or they didn't think about, how you're
Oh
phrasing your
yeah.
questions or something. It's just silly stuff. So it does take a little bit of push to push through some of that sometimes too, in this quest for knowledge.
I agree with you, Chris. And there's so much jargon that will be unfamiliar. And don't be afraid to ask, well, what does that mean? I mean, that's
Yes.
part of the reason that
Yes.
I didn't get my degree the first two times, was because I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't say, hey, could somebody help me, please? I'm
Right.
sure that if I did that, I would have gotten help. But instead, I just kind of threw up my hands and said, well, I'm not as smart as my friends, or I guess I can't do this. I'm not good at it. But, everybody learns differently, and we all have different areas of knowledge and expertise, and we all have different preferences about what we like to learn. Some of us may have more musical talents than others. Some of us,
Mhm.
may be interested in literature. Somebody may, be interested in science or hands-on. So it doesn't mean that just because you don't know one thing or the other, it doesn't mean that you're, stupid. It just means you haven't had that experience yet, or taken those steps. So I really encourage people to figure out, think about how they like to learn best, and a lot of those assessments will help you determine that. I could not sit and learn in a big lecture hall with 200 people. That was not the best environment for me. There's a school of thought about traditional learners and divergent learners, and I fall under that category of divergent learners. And
Interesting.
a traditional learner can learn, whether if my dog was teaching the class, they'd learn despite who the teacher was.
Right.
For me, I might need to have a more personal connection with that instructor. And, I think that's something to think about.
That's a great point. That's a really, really, really great point. I might try to add to that with my personal experience by saying that I think that we might find in our learning journey or experience that there are some things we take to faster than others, or we seem to be more naturally inclined to learn about or know about than others in some fashion. Some people are really mechanical, for example, but when it comes to book learning, they're lost. Or reverse wise, there are some people who are really into the words and they really get it and they're really into the theory of it, but you ask them to get their hands dirty and they're just like, they can't, no, I cannot take apart that engine block. Please stop asking me to, right? It's not going to work. Right. So there is that awareness of the fact that we can be naturally inclined or move in a direction, that interests us, or that is something we have talent in, versus things that maybe we don't. And we can tend to beat ourselves up about stuff we don't have talent in, rather than maybe acknowledge, I can know and learn a little bit about this, and that's okay, and I can get along with it, but this is where I really shine, and it's like, okay, fine, then work on where you shine. It's okay, it's not like you have to be, we don't all have to come out of this as Rhodes Scholars or as right. These, well-rounded people. We can focus and be interested in a thing and just really focus on that. There's nothing wrong with that.
And, a lot of my students want to be perfect.
Yeah.
And they want to be perfect at everything.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I know. And it's hard for them. It's hard for there are a lot of different students. Some students, and I wish I were like these students, are like, what do I need to get a B? Okay, I'm good to go. They're happy with the B. They're, they've met the requirement. They're good to go. Yeah. Other students agonize if they, are not perfect and don't get a 100 on every single, assignment. And that's just not going to happen for most people, because whatever you're doing, wherever you are in your education, if it's a job training program, or if you're learning to knit or crochet, you're going to make mistakes. And that's right. Part of the process. When you see a mistake, when you are told about a mistake, that's your opportunity to learn and kind of, say, okay, well, that, I won't make that again. Or if I do, it won't be as bad. But, the learning is all about, trial and error.
That's right. I would go so far as to say you would not be learning if you were perfect at everything.
Right. If you were what's the purpose of going to school? Right.
Exactly. Right. You're, the most, one of the most basic, or one of the most bottom line things you got to keep in mind as a person who's going to go learn something is you're gonna screw it up 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
Please do, because it's in the classroom, it's in the learning that you're supposed to learn how to do it wrong so that you learn how to do it right. It's all part of the process. If you hold yourself to an impossible standard before you even get started, and please hear me on this, people, because I am the worst at this. I sit here and I preach this because I've lived it so many times. I've had to slap myself around so many times. There were times in this last year doing this program I'm doing now where my professor had to basically drag me through the assignment because I just gave up. I was just so sure I could not do it. There's no way I could accomplish it. Well, I pulled it off just fine once I let go of the impossible standards of it has to be, I'm writing, okay, for example, I'm writing an essay. Well, it's an essay. It's an assessment. It's an assignment. It's no big deal, write 5,000 words. There you go. But I have to have it be perfect. It has to be publication quality. I have to make it so that, Scientific American will accept it next week or it's no good. And I do that to myself.
Yeah.
That's not the professor doing that to me. My professors have bent over backwards to assist me in overcoming that nonsense that I run on myself. And that comes from my background. I mean, I wasn't born as a perfectionist. Believe me, I was not, right? If you knew me as a kid, I was the last thing I was a perfectionist. But Scientology kind of beat that into me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fear of failure was so great that I would just, hold my own feet to the fire all the time, way more than I needed to.
Yeah.
And it would actually get in the way of my learning and my progress. And when you're your own worst enemy, right? Then you stop yourself before you're even getting going. So again, having lived that so close to now, I mean, we're talking about weeks ago.
Sure.
This is a real thing. I want to tell people about.
Well, I think that's a very important point because when you were in Scientology, you had some real, dire consequences, and I think it's a good idea to use that critical thinking and say, before getting into that loop of negative self-talk, look at, what are the consequences? What are the consequences if I'm not successful at this? How big are they? Well, if somebody, I met a student on the street one day, and the student said to me, I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Terrible." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I think I'm failing my math course." I said, "Tell me what's going on." Now, I'm not a math person at all. But he said, "I just don't think I'm going to pass it. I'm, just under a C, and I don't think I can pass the final." I said, "Well, what's the worst thing that is going to happen?" "Well, I'll have to take the course again." Okay, well, that's not great, but you'll already know the material, a lot of it already. You'll already have a head start on some of the other people that haven't taken the course.
Right.
So yes, it may be an added expense and additional time, and maybe it sets you back a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. And I have students that may get a failure on one assignment. And I talked to a student last week. She had straight A's, and she bombed one assignment, and she was still going to complete the course with an A. I said, you're, holding yourself to a standard that's, just unattainable, really. It may be attainable for a while, but any type of education program is really a test of endurance and, as you said, persistence.
Big time.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes, exactly. And you got to save yourself the energy to finish the marathon.
That's right.
That's a really important point, because you can cut yourself off at the knees. You really can. You can kill yourself on the journey. And I almost tried. I almost succeeded a couple times. I can't believe, obviously when I started my program last year, I didn't start it with the intention or idea that at some point along the line, I was going to be so overwhelmed and so down on myself that
Oh,
I
Chris.
felt like I had to quit, right? And
Yeah,
that happened 3 or 4 separate times.
sure.
That just absolutely and had I not, um I mean, I'm just being really honest here because I really want people to get like how even for somebody who is as advanced as I am, like I don't think of myself that way at all, but some people do see me that way. And I
Sure.
want to kind of pop that balloon a little bit because I ain't all that. And when I ran into these kind of problems, these kind of difficulties, sometimes the only thing that kept me going was the fact that I had let everybody in the world know I
Oh,
was doing this
yeah.
program.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a failure, right?
Right.
And so you ask, well, what's the consequences? Well, for me, it was being perceived publicly as a massive failure, and that was enough to to keep me going and persist and push through that nonsense. And every single time I did, and I'm a slow learner, so it took me 4 times before it finally got through to me that that it was I who was creating my problems because of these unattainable standards, this high bar I'd set for myself. My professor wasn't setting that for me. In fact, he was doing everything he could to discourage me, but I just wasn't quite hearing it until it finally got through to me, and I did finally
Right.
hear it, and you learn again a whole nother lesson, not one that you signed up to learn. You didn't see it coming, but there it is. It's a life lesson.
Well,
And you go, wow, okay, I this is actually making me a better person overall because I'm having to endure and persist and get through this, so.
well, I took a graduate statistics and calculus course last year
Oh.
for an MBA program, and I wanted to expand my teaching credential so that I could teach additional courses. And I took it at the university where I teach. And I did great in week 1 because I've had statistics before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, week 2, I was in over my head.
Wow.
And I was ready to bail, and I called my advisor and I said, I had to get the dean to sign for me to have permission to take the course. And I was like, oh no, now my boss knows I'm gonna I'm failing. What can I do? Oh my gosh. So my advisor, was kind of that support system. And she gave me a few suggestions. And then I thought, geez, why don't I take the advice I give to my students? And I reached out for help.
I know. Isn't it funny how we have to look in the mirror sometimes? It's
like,
just,
geez, But it was similar to yours because, like, oh my gosh, I have my doctorate. Why can't I do this?
Yeah.
And it took me, getting some help. I went to peer tutoring.
Good.
And I didn't get it the first time. I had to play the tape 5 times before I could get the concept.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud of my A- in calculus.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
I say that to let people know that even when you attain different degrees, there are still going to be areas in which you're challenged, and you may not feel successful in them, but get started, and just move yourself. The expectation I would say for people to have is to just try to move yourself to the next level of proficiency. See if you notice a little progress,
right,
and celebrate the progress. How have you been celebrating How have you been celebrating your accomplishments?
Well, I actually have been giving myself the attaboys when I do something right. I passed all my assessments. There's never been a problem on the program. That's what's so hilariously awful about this whole thing is all that pressure is coming from right in here.
Sure.
I had to deal with statistics too, and I have never taken statistics ever. So I had to go do my own crash course in statistics to kind of get, to kind of read these papers and figure out whether they're right or not. You have to know a little bit about this stuff. So I had to dive into that. It's been recognizing that it is perfectly acceptable, in fact, necessary to acknowledge our baby steps.
Yeah.
You don't, for some reason, when we become socialized and we start learning about how other people think of us, and we start thinking about ourselves the same way other people think about us, in other words, really badly, we can become our own worst enemy. You take a baby. I say this term baby steps, but this is adult steps too. Like if you don't take a little baby and have it walk a couple steps and then beat it because it's not running a mile.
Right.
Or invalidate it, or tell this poor kid, well, that just, good job for that, but where's your 4-minute mile, right?
Right.
And you go, if you don't give yourself a break and you don't give yourself the breaks you need to do it at the pace you need to do it at. You've said a couple times now, we all learn differently. We all learn at our own pace in our own ways. There is no one-size-fits-all system for this. There just isn't. So, and especially for us individuals who are individually now dealing with our individual nonsense, right? Our crap from our cult or our relationship or whatever. We got all that trauma to deal with. And then we have to feel like bloody idiots for having gotten involved in that in the first place. Then we have to feel like bloody idiots because we don't know anything about the world and we got to go learn about it. And you go, okay, I'm an idiot. Just own it. It's a hell of a lot easier.
Well, I mean, okay. I can't buy into that. I can't say people are idiots,
well,
because
I'm exaggerating.
I know, point, but I mean, certainly, I mean, when I hear different people, like the folks that were in NXIVM and Scientologists and, some Christian folks that I know that have been involved in cults, they got involved because they thought they were doing something good and that they were working for the greater good.
That's right.
And, I think we all buy into some false narrative about something at some point in our life. But, the point is that, we all get an opportunity to have do-overs. We get so many chances to have do-overs. So, it may be very, very hard to take those first steps, but take, small steps, take those baby steps, set a little small goal for yourself that you can achieve in, 1 to 3 months.
Yep. Then
maybe take the next step. It doesn't have to all happen at once, like you made it happen, Chris, but
I wish it had all happened at once.
You jumped into the deep end of the pool.
Well, I did, but it took years to get there.
Sure.
I mean, let's be clear. It wasn't on day one that I was jumping into a master's program, and that took a lot of prep to get there. Lots and lots and lots of prep. So you're on the right. What you're saying is 100% right. I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. Yeah, I really wanted to take the time in this. I anticipate that you and I are going to be doing more than one of these podcasts. This isn't. There's no be all end all of education for ex-cult members, right? In a podcast, I think we've got a lot of things we're going to have to talk about and touch on. What I wanted to do as a first step with this is I wanted to sort of lay this groundwork and really try to pay attention to the attitude with which we should approach this, the mindset, right? Like where should our head be, and kind of do away first with a lot of the false crap and the trauma stuff and the other crap that we bring to the table when we're coming as survivors to this subject. I wanted to address all that first and try to sort of get some of that out of the way and think about how we should address those things first, right? Has there been anything you think on that line that we have not covered here so far?
Well, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but it's something that's very prevalent in education today. It's something called growth mindset. Are you familiar with that?
Tell me.
It's the work of Carol Dweck, I believe it is, Dwekerk. I'm not 100% certain. I can get you that information.
Hmm.
But her theory is about, growth mindset and fixed mindset. And some of the things that we've discussed about that persistence and thinking, oh, I can't do this, I never had statistics before, I'm not going to be able to do that, those things that come under that sort of what I call negative self-talk, or putting
Hmm.
yourself down, or self-esteem, or some of those feelings and emotions that we have from being in a bad relationship, or a cult, whatever that oppressive situation is. If we keep staying there and we don't believe that we can be better, then we're in what we call a fixed, or what Carol calls a fixed mindset. What it will take for us to achieve and to get out of there is to work toward a growth mindset. And the growth mindset basically is, okay, I had a failure today. I don't have to have a failure tomorrow. It doesn't mean that that's the handwriting on the wall forever. Michael Jordan had failures, Thomas Edison had failures, you know, Einstein, they didn't think he was very smart. So, there,
That's
there are a
right.
lot of there's a little video that I share with my students called Famous Failures. And, it takes people, multiple tries to get to, their level of attainment, or proficiency. And so just knowing that, keep trying, and, just because you struck out the last time at bat doesn't mean that you're not going to at least get hit with the ball and get on base.
That's right. And a base hit is the step one
That's right.
to the home run, right? To getting
That's right.
home.
That's right.
To scoring, right? If you didn't hit
Exactly.
the home run, you're not a failure.
That's right. I think,
You know?
I love baseball analogies.
Okay, good. Well, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good one. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good one. Yeah, the attitude really is everything. It's why we've been harping on it this whole show, right? Is I
Right.
really, really, really think that this is super important stuff.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
and there's something else, grit.
Yeah.
And maybe I might have my people confused, but there's also a lot in education now about grit, and students having grit, being persistent, being determined, and encouraging people with, what grit looks like. And so I may have my people confused. I'm not sure. I'll have to look up and see who my grit person is, and
Okay.
who my growth mindset person is. But both of those things, we need to keep on going. Grit means, you have the ability to persist and keep on going even when it gets hard.
That's right.
And
That's right.
not throwing in the towel. And just because it's hard doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Exactly. It probably means one of two things. In my own experience, it's either been I was harping on something way out of proportion to how much I needed to, and I was making it more difficult for myself. And I've definitely talked about that a lot. The other thing is you're taking on too much. You need to step back.
Yeah.
You need to walk it back. It's not that you don't need to know all that, but you're gonna have to get there a little bit more step by step.
And Chris,
and it's
that's a really good point, because a lot of my students don't realize how much time they need to put in to a college level course.
Yes.
And I'm just going to throw it out there. If you're doing an online course, you need at least 15 hours. And, it could vary a little bit for different people. In some courses, it may take less time. But when I was taking that calculus course, it took me 18 hours.
Right.
So, I think people need to be kind of realistic about, what they can do. They have, families and, jobs, and they may have, other obligations like taking care of an ill parent or, watching children or something. But, thinking about what's realistic, what you can achieve. And like
Right.
you said, not, taking on too much.
Yeah, that can be hard to figure out at first.
I agree.
Again, here's another example of me walking right into it, right? Because I decided, oh yeah, I can do this. What is this? 2 classes a term and then a dissertation. Oh yeah, I can do that full time. I'll get through that in a year. Right? Well, let's just say the classwork was awesome. The lecturing was great, right? The essays I've written so far have been wonderful. But let's just say I needed a little bit more time. And thankfully, within the system that I am in and the professors that I have, they were able to work with me to get me that time. Because, you might have a family, you might have kids, you might have a YouTube channel you have to service, you might have a lot of different things, right?
Well, then the other thing is life happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you never know when your gallbladder is going to blow out.
That's right.
And I mean, I say that and people are like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. But, it does. It happens.
That's right.
All sorts of things happen,
Exactly.
So being kind of prepared, and if you have a minor setback, don't, it may seem really big at the time, but try to, look at things in the scope of the entirety of the situation.
Precisely. And don't be afraid, if you're going to ask for help to get there, and you should, and you get the help you need to get there, don't forget that lesson once you're there. You can still get help. There's tutorials. There's Khan Academy and Great Courses Plus and Crash Courses and all these things were the only reason I got through some of the classwork that I got through. So it's not just help to get there, it's help through the entire process, and it's there for you if you reach for it. Pride is not something that really has a place in this. It's not about that. It's about learning, and if you want to learn, you got to go through the school of hard knocks a little bit to do it.
Chris, you made a good point a few minutes ago about if something, there are going to be sort of, I don't know, screw ups or things that don't work out right away. Just because you ask someone for help and they can't give it to you, they don't give it to you, you don't hear back from them. Don't say, oh, well, they hate me and I can't do this. And they thought, go to somebody else, move on to the next person, follow up,
right.
maybe their gallbladder blew out. So, I mean, life happens. So just, I think being determined and persistent, despite things your little inner voice may be telling you, stick with it and really, pursue what you want. Whether it's, some people, I've worked with people that just wanted to learn enough so they could get their driver's license. That's fine. You don't have to have a 4-year degree or a doctorate. Set a small goal for yourself.
That's right.
And celebrate when you achieve that goal, and celebrate the, milestones along the way.
Exactly. I would, I think we're going to move toward wrapping up this show now, because I think we've covered these fundamentals that we wanted to. I am very, very, very interested in any feedback that you folks out there might have about this topic and what else you would like to know about or hear from us on it. Because I can talk about my own experiences, and I can talk about, education from my Scientology background. And she, of course, Pat can talk about all levels of this. And we have plans to move forward and do talking about, okay, this GED? What's the value of the thing, and why would you go about getting it? And then what about college, and what about community college and university, and what are these things, and what are the paths to them, and how do we navigate our way through those? We would like to talk about those things in maybe in a part 2, but I don't want to jump off to some esoteric sounding thing or something that might be way down the road for a lot of people if they need help with something a little bit more immediate first, which is why we grounded this in very, very fundamental stuff first, right? So I want you guys out there to give us feedback on this too, as to what you'd like to know about this, so we can it'll help inform our future discussions on it, I think. Yeah. There you go. So, Pat, did you have anything else you wanted to say on that line?
Boy, I don't think so. I think I've probably talked a lot.
You have, and you've said great things.
Well, good. I hope, I just want it to be useful to people, and I want them to feel, empowered by taking those first steps.
Exactly. Me too. And if the whole if the takeaway from this show is maybe you had some doubts or reservations, maybe you were completely lost, maybe you had no idea what to do with this, maybe you thought education was completely beyond your capability or ability or future for whatever reason, even financially. And if you're now thinking, okay, maybe I can do this, maybe this is something I should look at, maybe there is a possibility that I could do more with this, then I have accomplished the purpose of what I was trying to do. That's really all I'm trying to do with this show, is just introduce the idea. It's a reality that you can do it. And if you have a good attitude about it, and you're willing to make mistakes, and you're willing to see it through, the sky is the limit. I swear to God, it really is for you. And that's my main theme for this whole thing. So, Pat, thank you very much for helping me.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been a great chat.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too. I think there's so much more to cover with this. And like I said, I feel so, I just can't believe it's taken me this long to get to this particular aspect of cult recovery. So thank you for reaching out to me, and thank you for your help with this.
My pleasure.
All right, folks. And of course, as I will say at the end of all of my shows, because it's kind of necessary, if you're finding my show useful, helpful, entertaining, educational, informative in some fashion, and it's helping you in your life, then consider helping me in mine, because you guys are the ones who keep this show going and keep this channel going through your contributions through Patreon and through PayPal. That's how I make my living. So thank you very much for your support out there, folks, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.